Welcome, friends, and welcome back to YMCast Season 3, Episode number 5. It is, as always, good to be with you this week. I hope you are well, and in this particularly chilly week down here in the southwest, we've been hitting temperatures of highs of 1 or maybe even 2 degrees over the last few days. My heating has been working overtime. But unfortunately, we've not had any snow, whereas most of the country seems to have had snow this week. So I'm rather missing out on that. But it is absolutely lovely to be with you this week, as always. We start our YMC casts in prayer. Lord, thank you that we can continue to meet and converse in this way, that we are able to praise you in this manner with these podcasts. With these podcasts, we hope that we learn, we hope that we will be interested, we hope we're able to see things that we have never perhaps seen before. But remember that we all do this to glorify you, to praise you. Amen. This week, we start with a bit of an adventure to our brothers and sisters in the United Reformed Church. And in particular, we're going to be hearing a bit about their youth advocacy this week and something called the theory of change.
Lots of people at URC Youth are passionate about making a positive change in the world. To start off URC Youth's Activism and Advocacy Month, we're going to be looking at the theory of change. The theory of change is a way of planning and evaluating a campaign that aims to bring about social change. It's often used by charities, NGOs, businesses and government sectors to structure their projects. Today I'm going to provide a brief introduction to the theory of change, but there will be some links below the video if you want to develop your knowledge further. So, the theory of change. The first thing that you have to consider when starting to campaign for change is what the big picture is. What is the overall change that you want to see? This might be, for example, ensuring that all women have a right to education, or ending food poverty, or ending the climate crisis. In this video, I'm going to use the example of the Ending the Climate Crisis. Last year, Christian Aid's Prophetic Activist Scheme ran a campaign focused on climate justice, and they used the theory of change, so we're going to follow that campaign as an example. So once you know what your long-term vision is, in this case ending the climate crisis, you can then consider what the smaller steps are that can lead to this overall change. This is where you consider what the problems are that contribute to the overall situation. So with climate crisis, there are many things that contribute to it, such as the burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, or overconsumerism, to name but a few. These are still massive issues, but they're more specific than the overarching problem that you identified in the first step. You need to pick just one precondition in order to give your campaign focus. From this, you can then continue to narrow down your focus until you have a really specific issue to campaign on. The Christian Aid campaign was focused on the use of fossil fuels, but more specifically, it was concerned with the fact that the UK was investing billions of pounds in fossil fuel extraction overseas, which was in turn contributing to the climate change that affects the most vulnerable countries in the world. The focus of the campaign, therefore, was to end UK government investment in overseas fossil fuels projects. What you then have to do is to consider how you can bring about that change. Consider what the alternatives are to the current status quo and what sort of culture change would be needed to bring about your aim. When you're thinking about how to change the status quo, you need to think about who has the power to bring about that change. This might be world leaders and politicians, or CEOs, or even local businesses and local leaders. These are the people that your campaign needs to target because they have the power to change the current situation. Going back to the Christian Aid campaign, they identified that Boris Johnson as the Prime Minister was the person who would have the most influence in bringing about the change that we wanted. Now that you have a clear vision of what change you want to bring about and who can create that change, you can start identifying your goals and objectives for the campaign. You already have an overall goal, but this needs to be broken down into manageable chunks. Map out your campaign and what you want to achieve in the time that you have available. So you might identify what you want to have achieved in, say, 3 months, 6 months and 12 months. It might be that with one campaign, you want to have met with your local MP by 3 months and to have discussed the issues that you're concerned about with them. Then by 6 months, you might want the issue debated in Parliament, and by 12 months, you want a statement from government about what they're going to do. Your objectives, though, are always going to be individual to your particular campaign. Decide what progress will look like and work out the indicators that you're making progress. This will be your way of monitoring the effectiveness of your campaign. Now comes the fun bit. This is where you decide what actions you're going to take. This will tie in closely to what you've decided progress will look like. If you want your issue to be debated in Parliament, for example, you might launch a petition to the government and contact your MP to get the issue raised. You could also raise a stunt or protest to raise awareness, or you might run an information campaign. This is where you get to be creative, and this is the bit that activists generally really love. Whilst you enact your campaign, continue to evaluate how you're doing. You've already thought about your objectives and indicators, so every couple of months, schedule in a time to reassess where you are. You need to be constantly on your toes with activism, ready to adapt to any changes in the situation. With the campaign to divest from fossil fuels, there were several announcements throughout the year from the government, and they made indications that they were planning to end funding from fossil fuels. It wasn't until December 2020, though, that they finally actually made a commitment and said, yes, we are going to do this. Be willing to change your timeline to keep pressure on the people in power, and keep an eye on what's happening in case there are things that you could do differently to have a greater effect. And finally, never ever give up. Even if you get the change that you want, which is what we're all aiming for, continue to be active and to hold people in power accountable and to ensure that they do what they say they're going to do. This is the way that, slowly but surely, people can work together to bring about that blue sky thinking of the long-term vision. So, the long and the short of the theory of change is to identify the issues that you want to address and the ways that you can do this, to consider who can bring about the change, and then to find ways to influence them. As you're doing this, you set indicators and track your progress in order to keep your campaigning on track. Throughout the Activism and Advocacy Month, we're going to be looking at different methods of campaigning, such as letter writing and protesting, and then throughout the year, we'll be looking at specific issues. Have a look at the links in the comments for more information, and keep an eye out for more posts and events over the coming weeks.
Thank you very much for that. I think that was a really interesting piece of work and something that I think we can engage with as all ages of the church. Now, as I was talking about last week, February is LGBTQ History Month. Obviously, within the church, we are LGBTQ affirming and kind of welcome people within the church of all genders and sexualities. And this week, we are going to hear from 3 people who have been involved in helping the Methodist Church think about how it can work with LGBTQ people. One of these people has appeared on YMCast before and is quite familiar to us in Mandy Briggs. The other 2, Anna Malner and Dennis Lydell, you may not have come across, but it's a really interesting conversation and well worth a listen to.
So hello and welcome to this conversation. I'm joined by Reverend Mandy Briggs and Anna Malnut, who are both here to help us have a little conversation about Pride parades, Pride services, and how we as a church can interact with Prides happening around the country. Pride celebrations have been going on for decades in the UK, and are a really wonderful way for the LGBT community to both celebrate who they are and also to stand up for their rights, and to point out to folks that LGBT folks are here and they are in our community, and they are a vibrant, loving and exciting community to be a part of. So how then can we as the church interact with these Pride events that are happening in our own cities and towns around the country? Mandy Briggs joins us from the New Room Bristol. She's the education officer there, and she's going to tell us a bit about what happened there. And Anna Malnett is from Notts and Derby district, and she went to Pride as an ally, and she's got a great experience to share with us there. So I wonder if I can come to Mandy first. Hey Mandy, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you, Del.
Good. So tell us what happened for your New Room. What happened?
So the New Room's quite a special place. We're right in the middle of Bristol city centre. It's been there since 1739. It's the oldest Methodist building in the world. And the Pride March goes right past our door. And Bristol Pride is a really big march. We had about 40,000 people there regularly. And as I said, the Pride March goes right past our door. And in 2018, we were contacted by a small group called Christians at Bristol Pride, and they asked us if we'd be interested in hosting a Pride service in the chapel. And the idea for that was that Christians, LGBT plus Christians and allies would gather together for a time of prayer and worship in the chapel, a real celebration before going out and joining the march itself. And we thought about it as a team at the New Room, and we talked to our trustees, and we really wanted to go ahead. And part of the reason we wanted to go ahead was that we've got a sign on our door that says "All are welcome." And we thought, well, if we have got a sign on our door that says "All are welcome," then this is an opportunity to really live that out. This is an opportunity to say, yes, you are welcome, and to host the service. So in 2018, we decided that we would go ahead and work together with Christians at Bristol Pride to host the service.
That's cool. And what was the reception from Pride, from the LGBT community? Did anyone turn up?
Yes, so I think that the Christians at Bristol Pride group are a very small part of the whole Pride organisation. I mean, it's actually like a little kind of satellite group from the whole Pride organisation, but we were in the Pride programme, and the response was good. We had some really positive reactions from a lot of people, and the service was well supported. We had, I think, about 80 people turn up. It was a lovely service, really joyful.
Oh, great. That sounds great. And lots of positive response then. Was anybody worried about you holding this service?
Yes, we did have a few people who objected to us holding the service in the chapel. We had a few people who turned up to protest outside our gates on the day of the service, and a couple of protesters came into the service to try and disrupt it. We were very gracious. We let them say their piece, but then we did ask them to leave. And thankfully, the service, I think the whole spirit of the service wasn't damaged by that. I mean, it was unnerving at the time, but I think overall the whole service was very joyful, very gracious. And for me, it just felt full of the spirit.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so, would you do it again? Is it something that, when we actually get back to doing Pride parades at all, that you would do again, and you would offer to the LGBT community again?
Absolutely, and we did. After that experience in 2018, we hosted the service again in 2019, and in 2019, some Christians went and joined the parade, but we also had a group of people standing on the pavement outside the chapel as the march went past, just holding up signs saying, "You're beautiful, you are loved, And we had such an amazing response from people going past in the march. People were coming over and hugging us, giving us sweets, giving us stickers. And we just felt that that was a really positive thing to do. In 2020, obviously, we couldn't, there wasn't a march, there wasn't a whole Pride event. So we had an online service, and we're hoping to be involved in the future as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. There is, I think it is so wonderful when Christians can stand there and say, with no agenda at all, you are loved, to LGBT people, because for so long they've heard the message from various factions within the Christian church that they are not. And it's wonderful when we can stand alongside them. And that's exactly what you did, really, Anna, when you rocked up to your own Pride festival, wasn't it? You stood alongside LGBT people. Tell us about that.
Yeah, for me, that was the important thing, was that I wanted to be able to share that message of love and tell people that they are loved. And I think, so for me, I've always, I would always have classed myself as an ally, but there reached a point where I thought, I'm not being an ally if I'm not doing anything. It's all very well me sitting at home in my comfortable life with my husband as a straight cis woman saying, yeah, I believe that everyone's equal, but if I didn't do anything, then I'm not really being an ally, because I'm not making a change, I'm not helping, I'm not supporting anyone in any way. So I wanted to do something to say, actually, I believe that you are equal, and I believe that God loves you, and I'm telling you that in an open and a public way. I'm not going to hide. I was often quite careful in who I shared my views and opinions with, and very protective of that. And anyone that knew me and knew me well would absolutely knew how I felt, but it wasn't necessarily something that I shared in public or with the people that I go to church with. And I just thought that was massively hypocritical. And I thought, do you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it well. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a Christians at Pride t-shirt, and I'm going to have a wild party. And I'm going to cover my face in glitter. I'm going to have a great old time. And I did, and it was amazing. And the only way that I could do that was by enlisting a friend who I knew would feel the same and would love to go to Pride. So I was like, I want to do this. I need somebody braver to take me. So I sent her a message and said, do you want to go to Pride? She's like, of course I do. We took her son, and we had an amazing time dancing in the streets, handing out stickers, because we took part in the parade, and walking along, blowing our whistles, and just sharing God's love in that very special place. It was one of the most amazing days of my life.
That's wonderful to hear. What do you think was about the Pride Festival, the Pride Parades, that was so daunting in the first place, though, that made you scared and made you need that friend to come and hold your hand as you were doing it?
I was very aware that a Pride Parade isn't my space. It's a place for LGBT people to be who they are and be safe. And actually, for me, I was invading their special and safe place. So I was very conscious to make sure that I did that in the right way. And so I spoke to quite a few people before I went, because I wasn't sure whether it was the right thing to do, because as a non-LGBT person, should I go to Pride? And we had a lot of conversations that actually, if I recognise that it's not my space and that I'm only going to do that and to be supportive, then that's okay. So I was worried about that, but I was also worried that if I went, I wasn't going to be quiet about it. It was a very public declaration of my support of the Pride movement, and I think I said before, like, it's not a secret, but it's not necessarily something that I've always shouted about. So that was a very conscious decision from me to do that, and to drag my husband, who's a minister, in an area where there are a lot of people who aren't LGBT pro allies. So that was a big decision for both of us to do that together, and to tell people that we believe that God loves everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not sin to be the person that God made you to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, okay. Thank you very much for sharing your experience. I think it's wonderful to have allies like you for the LGBT community, and I hope that the conversation that we've had today will just help folks who are thinking, should I go to Pride, to be brave enough to go and be an ally at Pride, or thinking, should we as a church hold a Pride Thanksgiving service, be brave enough to step out and do so. So thanks both for your time today.
Thank you very much for that. That was really interesting to hear, and to hear how we as a church can engage with Pride events. So thank you very much for listening to this episode of YMCast. As always, it is brilliant to be with you. If you want to get in contact with me, please do use the hashtag YMCcast or email me at michaelymcworker. So I hope you all have a very good week, and cheerio.